sometimes we do things that just don't quite go the way we had planned. Just last year, my family and I gathered to celebrate my mom's birthday together. With my dad, brother, and grandparents all around the table for dinner, we enjoyed lots of laughs, some sharing of memories, as well as several slices of flatbread pizza. And as the energy of the table shifted, I sensed a moment where I might have us do something nice for my mom. As I broke the silence, I shared the idea that each one of us could go around the table and share one nice thing about my mom that we each love about her. My family loved the idea, and each of us went around the table and shared something special we loved about my mom, her humor, how hardworking she's been, how thankful my brother and I are to be her sons. And yet, while my family seemed to enjoy it, I noticed my mom's eyes were looking down. Her face was bright red and she appeared uneasy. After dinner, I talked with my mom and asked if everything was okay, sensing and mentioning that I felt like something was off. My mom said, though she appreciated the sentiment, that this moment felt really uncomfortable for her. I just didn't like that much attention on me. My heart sank. This was the last thing I wanted to happen on my mom's birthday, to have contributed to making her feel embarrassed or uncomfortable. And it was a valuable learning moment for me even today that sometimes even with the best of our intentions, the impact that we have can be far off. And sometimes, while an innocent round of birthday affirmations might seem like a nice or comforting thing, it can really have even an unexpected outcome. In my case, causing my mom to feel embarrassed. So this morning, we're talking about this idea of intentionality and how our intentions can sometimes be far from our impacts on others. With our Soul Matters theme this month of living with intention, a portion of living intentionally means acknowledging when our intentions don't always measure up to their outcomes. How many of you have had moments like these where even with our good wishes and ideas, we still end up saying the wrong thing or doing something else that doesn't quite land with someone? Living with intention seems to involve opening ourselves up to this risk. Simply by being in relationship and community with others, we are bound to do or say things that don't quite match what we had hoped for. Or in the most basic sense, we mess up or make mistakes. Our good intentions aren't received in the ways that we had hoped. We miss the mark with how we express our care and concern for others. And even though we might be afraid, my sermon for you all this morning is about pushing ourselves past this fear to being more comfortable with accepting our impacts and acknowledging when we miss the mark or cause harm. In accepting the impacts of our actions, we must be able to suspend our own egos and self-judgments in order to fully and presently listen to another person. Indeed, intentionality requires an attentiveness not just to what we intended to do, it requires an attentiveness also to what follows, as well as being accountable for it. How many of us instinctually turn to that one phrase when we realize something is off or amiss, saying, "But I didn't mean it." In our reading this morning that Pam shared from the Scientific American, author Melanie Tannenbaum talks about the struggle to examine our impacts when we are so lost in the world of our own intents. Beyond just our individual relationships to one another, our impacts versus our intents are also a conversation in social justice work. Tannenbaum reflects on how she's heard a phrase repeated across several social justice spaces over and over again. It's not about intent, it's about impact. In Tannenbaum's words, the overall message is that when someone does something hurtful or offensive to another person, the perpetrator's intent is not what is the most important when engaging the appropriateness of an action. The point is that we really need to focus on impact and not intent. Our own self-perceptions of our actions are a huge part of our ability to acknowledge their outcomes. When we do things with good intentions, we think to ourselves, well, why didn't that go better? I didn't mean for it to go that way. I was doing a good thing that I tried to do. Even with others and how others see our actions, perception still can cloud or even warp how we view our impacts. Intentional acts that cause harm are experienced with more pain than unintentional ones, even if the outcomes are the same. You know this yourself if you think back to a time when someone did something intentionally to hurt you. The pain that adds on to the harm, knowing that someone wanted to cause damage or wound. Even so, we can get lost in our intentions that we fail to see the fullest picture possible. We can miss a real opportunity to step back from the situation, take a breath, and acknowledge our impacts without defensiveness or self-judgment. In the case of my mom's birthday, I'd wanted to do something nice to celebrate her in all the ways that we love and care about her. When she explained how it made her feel, how it made her uncomfortable to be at the table with all the eyes on her, I noticed my inner voice starting to chime in. But we said such nice things about you. We love you. Come on, Mom. It was a nice idea. It took a lot for me to back down from my own judgments on my good intentions and listen just for how they didn't cause the impact that I had wanted. I had to acknowledge to my mom that I was sorry, that I had made this and it had made her immensely self-conscious, and that this wasn't the way that she would have liked to have been celebrated. The good news is my mom and I are still good today. But this message of impacts versus intents is one for us here at UUCGT as well, especially as we engage with and serve our wider community. Though we are clear and eager with our work with extending a helping hand to others, I am sure that sometimes our impacts as a community might be off from what we intend. We might give off a certain impression that others might need our help, that we know what is best for others or what a community needs more than they do. Even with really solid and good intentions or even acts of service or good works, we might cause harm or make others feel uncomfortable or alienated in ways that we might not have intended. And sure, while we especially don't mean to, we can be true to our values if we can't be true to our values if we don't acknowledge that sometimes, even when we are trying to do good, we can mess up or even hurt others. The focus should not be on our intentions. It needs to be on our impacts from our words, deeds, and actions. Accountability itself can only result when we are able to stop ourselves, to take a step back from our self-focus, and acknowledge the full picture of the harm. Unitarian Universalism teaches us that living intentionally involves deeply examining our impacts. Our second principle, which lifts up justice, equity, and compassion in our relationships with one another, requires a sense of compassionate listening and understanding for us to fully live into what this principle means. It requires us to postpone our own ego and hurts, to listen for what others really need for us to hear. With our seventh principle, we understand how our world is an interdependent web of connection, how we ourselves are a part of this web, how our actions push and pull the delicate threads in a way that has far-reaching vibrations and ripples. Part of holding a reverence and respect for this interdependent web means that we understand this core truth to life and living, that we are all connected, and that our actions are not independent of this wider web. This metaphor of a web is helpful in thinking about our relationships to others and the impacts that we can have. As we weave and spin these threads, some still new and forming, we inevitably touch and interact with other threads also in the web. We end up pulling and pushing threads, trying as we might to weave a web that is beautiful. And yet, even with these beautiful intentions, the wider web itself has still been impacted. The other threads have vibrated with our weaving. Others too have weaved in and around our threads. Our connections with others are always in a web-like relationship with these constant pushes and pulls no matter what we do. We cannot escape this reality unless we are somehow not in relationship with another human being. So, what now? How can we live into intentionality when no matter what we do, there may always be impacts that we don't intend or expect? How can we embrace our impacts even when these are hard, and further live into our lives with deep intention? In this process, we must remain open to learning, to recognizing when we've made a mistake, or even just that we've caused harm or pain that we didn't mean to. We can't live fully with a sense of fear for what could go wrong. Our relationships with others demand intentionality and engagement even across the difficult places, even across those moments where things are just messy and hard to put back together. They require us to dig deep within ourselves to understand how someone else has felt. They require courage to travel toward discomfort, even when we know that we messed up or missed the mark at times. Intentionality asks us to own the hurts that we've caused and to learn how to do better the next time. And while we can't ever fully remove this risk, the risk that comes from being connected with others and making mistakes, we can give our own selves permission to let go of our defenses and really just listen. That is how we can help heal some of the hurt and be better about doing right by our own neighbors the next time. Sometimes, like in our Time for All Ages, we can be like Peter. Even with the best of intentions, with writing a wonderful letter, setting out to mail it, but doing everything we can to stop it from blowing away in the wind, sometimes we just mess up. We bump into our dear friend and cause hurt. But not all is lost in these moments of disconnection. When we are willing and able to truly listen, to get down from our own pedestals of our good intentions, and hear how we've missed the mark, we can still hope to repair and heal our relationships with each other. So in closing, may you be brave to take a backseat from even the best of your intentions. May you be willing to listen, to postpone your own thoughts or self-judgments, to make a space for others to share their hurts. And when you've been hurt yourself, may you be brave in sharing these impacts with others, even in times when this is really hard. May you live life fully and intentionally, working to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And may we own the impacts of our actions over our intentions and create lasting connections with each other, where we can acknowledge our hurts and focus on what we still might do better. May it be so, and amen.